Well, human design is our energetic blueprint. If they're our behavioral and personality profiles, this is what's underneath that. It's our energetic blueprint.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to Call Me CEO. This is Camille Walker, your host. And here we like to talk about how women are building businesses, particularly for mothers, and how they are doing it effectively, what drives them, what it is that we can do and learn from each of these women every single week. I had someone recently say to me, I love listening to your podcast because it's like attending a women's conference, but it's free. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. That's a really awesome way of doing that, especially when we can speak to women across the world, which we are speaking with Emma Dunwoody, who is literally down under. She is from Australia and she is a master coach and human design expert. And when I was reached out to from her team or from her, I'm not sure which one, I was really inspired by her approach to efficiency and to understanding yourself and how to keep yourself motivated. And I feel like there's so much going on in the world right now that is negative or can be overwhelming. And let's face it, we're all doing a lot of things and wearing a lot of hats. So I was really excited to speak with Emma today. So thank you, Emma, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk all things human design with you.
Oh, and I could just listen to your accent all day. I was just telling you that I was in Australia just this last June and fell in love with the people, the culture, and the food was amazing. Please tell us a little bit more about you and where you're from.
Well, I actually I live in Byron Bay with my family now, but I was born in Sydney, grew up in Melbourne, spent 10 years in Sydney, and then we moved up here. So I've kind of been all over the place with a little stint living in London. So yeah, all up the east coast of Australia. I couldn't decide which part I loved most.
I don't blame you for that. I think every place we stopped and it was like a whirlwind. I was there with my son. We were with Education First, which is EF Tours. And if you're interested in world travel and wanting to do it in a way that you could even involve your children and not have to worry about all of the things to see and the most efficient way to see them, EF is the way to go. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I actually was able to do that as a kid and went to Washington, D.C. and went to our national monuments. But my goodness, seeing Australia and New Zealand, I was really blown away by the Aboriginal culture that I knew nothing about, who actually were the first to be there, just like our Native Americans. And I feel like it's just an amazing place. Every place we stopped, I wanted to see more. So I can understand that you wanted to just try all the places.
Yeah, and it's interesting talking about like being a mum and an entrepreneur. Like we spent all of 2021 in a caravan traveling all the way around Australia and then into Uluru, which is in the center of Australia as well. So yeah, it's certainly a beautiful country and it's so worth taking the time out to get to know the Indigenous culture because it is apparently like the most ancient culture still living on planet Earth. So and they're amazing. You know, their whole culture is about being custodians of the planet. You know, they don't own anything, but their only responsibility is to take care of Mother Earth. And I just think it's so beautiful. I love their ethos.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's a lot like the Native Americans too. Like,
Yeah.
just really taking care, where now for many years we're saying, how can we reverse all the damage that's been done? So we need more of that
Yeah.
messaging for sure.
Yes,
So
we
tell
do.
me, when you were in the caravan with your kids, you said, how many
Yeah.
kids do you have? What are their ages?
Two kids. So they're 16 and 12 now. So they were 14 and 10. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was
Very cool.
fantastic. It was so good. Like such a great opportunity for them to get out of the classroom. And I
Mm,
think both of them they don't really love sort of standard education, especially with a mum like me and being raised very much in alignment with with their design and being empowered instead of, told what to do. And so doing distance education and traveling around Australia was really powerful for them. And they're both at Steiner School now, and they just love it. My eldest is like, Mom, finally, these people talk to me like they actually care about me. They don't talk down to me. I'm like, yeah, well, it's a different way of being. And yeah, I think it's our kids are just so incredibly important. They are the leaders of tomorrow. So I'm just massive on empowering them and not forcing them to be something that the world thinks they should be.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you're using human design. So for people who are unfamiliar with human design, I actually have done an episode around human design before, but it's literally been maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And so could you describe to the audience, for people who maybe this is their first time hearing about it, what is the approach of human design and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So human design itself is what we call our energetic blueprint. So many people out there, you would have heard of things like Myers-Briggs, or you would have heard of Enneagrams, really big right now, or these personality and behavioral profiling tools that really help us get to know ourselves at a much deeper level. Well, human design is our energetic blueprint. If they're our behavioral and personality profiles, this is what's underneath that. It's our energetic blueprint. So what it tells us is all the themes, the superpowers, the gifts, everything that lies within you. It's also going to show you where your challenges are, the sort of fears that you will most likely have created in your unconscious mind. And it really gives you, I mean, I focus predominantly on things like purpose and abundance, because in my journey, I used to teach just straight human design, but I'm a manifesting generator, so I don't stick to the one thing. And it's very much, I really believe in, small business and entrepreneurship and changing the world that way. So human design is also a synthesis of the Western astrology, the Hindu the Hindu chakra system, the Chinese I Ching, and the Kabbalah tree of life. And the thing that I think is fascinating, this was channeled information just like things like A Course in Miracles was. And obviously someone like Gabby Bernstein has built all her work on the Course in Miracles. But the thing that is fascinating to me is that what has happened, like human design has mathematically mapped all four of these ancient wisdoms together to come up with the most accurate blueprint of the potential that lies within you. My favorite thing is like when you start working with your designer, I'm working with clients. I just did a speaking gig on the weekend, and person after person came up after it and just was like, you just gave me permission to be me. And I'm like, exactly. That's what human design is all about. It's like this ultimate permission slip to be you, because so many of us are walking around with this feeling deep inside that there's more, that we've got more to give, that there's more in us, that there's more to life. But very few of us actually make that manifest. And human design is like the roadmap to actually make that manifest.
Yeah, I think that I didn't realize that its origin had so many cultural backgrounds, that it was an accumulation of, did you say 3 or 4 different ones?
Four. Yeah,
4.
four ancient wisdoms. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
That's
cool.
so
Like
cool.
you think about it, like there's no way a human brain, so this information came through in 8 days. There's no way a human brain could have mathematically mapped those four ancient wisdoms together in like 100 years, let alone 8 days. So it's definitely something that's given to us. And the big thing that I love about it, because my background is I'm a behavioral coach. So I've been working with profiling and behavioral tools for years, and I love them because the key to success in any area is knowing ourselves better. And ultimately, the thing that I really love about human design is that it really not only shows us our challenges, but it shows us our potentials, and it's an experiment. So this whole idea of I'm not putting you in a box, but I'm going to give you all this information and I'm going to tell you exactly how to experiment with making decisions, for example. And when you run that experiment, you're like, okay, this does work for me. This is the way I'm designed to make decisions. This is how I make the most aligned decisions. This is what it feels like when I'm aligned. This is what it feels like when I'm out of alignment. So it's this one big experiment. So ultimately, the moment you take responsibility for experimenting with your design is the moment that you really start to step into your greatest potential.
And just like anything else, I think that we need to focus on the tool, that this is a tool for something. And I think that depending on people's preconceived notions of what it could mean, could block them from even experimenting with the curiosity of it being a tool for them. So I hope everyone listening can listen to this with an open mind of it being a tool for something that could help you to identify purpose and help you to make decisions, that it doesn't have to be all of it, but that it can be a
Yeah.
piece of that puzzle.
And this is a really important point. It's a lot of like one of the areas that I'm definitely not, in alignment with the original knowledge is exactly that. The thing that I see so much out there in the world with human design is people jump out of one dogma and into the dogma of human design. And I think a lot of them, so often I actually see projectors like you, they're the ones that get really stuck. They end up sitting around on their hands waiting for these elusive invitations, thinking that that's the only way that they can actually have life come to them. And it's just not true, which is why I say, again, like it's an experiment. So it's all about actively giving things a go and seeing what results you get. And the results that work, great, do more of it. But the things that don't, then you want to let it go, because exactly as you say, like at the end of the day, this is the energy that lies inside of you. This is your essence, and how you bring that to life is totally up to you. So it's your responsibility to do you, not to just be the tool, because that's not going to help either.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up about projector, because that's what mine is. And when it said you have to be invited to do things, I'm like, well, that's not true. I go ahead and put myself ahead of things and try things out all of the time without being invited. So I really had to wrestle with that one a little bit, because that one didn't really ring true to me. But maybe I just don't understand the piece of it more. I don't feel like I'm someone who sits on my hands. I will oftentimes, I'll research a lot, but I also put myself out there a lot and try a lot of new things. So I was like,
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing. But perhaps it's something where I don't push my ideals on other people, that I definitely have a very open way of seeing the world, and that I really appreciate other perspectives. So I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe that's
I mean, look,
something.
and I think the big thing is what I would guess is one of the keys to being a projector is to understand that you're on the planet to be seen and acknowledged. And it's for the wisdom that lies within you. Now, an unresourceful projector is trying to force people to see them and acknowledge them. But a resourceful projector who has good self-worth, that like you just said, like I just try out a bunch of stuff and I just do the thing. It's not about being seen or trying to force people to acknowledge your brilliance that you have within you. It's more about just, like, as you said, like obsessing over the thing, because often projectors will obsess over the thing. Like they're just like, oh, I just really want to learn more. I want to know more. I want to make it better. And when they live in that space, then the invitations come. So I would guess that, potentially you're just in alignment and you're getting invitations all the time, but you're just not consciously aware of it. And the other piece for you is you're a line 3, you're a 1-3 profile. So the way you move through life, your how is about having experiences. You just have experience after experience. It's kind of, the original knowledge will call it trial and error. I don't really love that. I can't, because I'm a line 3 as well. I'm a 3-5. It's kind of like you love to get messy. You love to try out a bunch of things. And what happens in that place is that you call out what doesn't work. You're like, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, but this works. So this is the one. Let's do this one. And with your profile, once you find the thing, you have the experience, you're like, okay, now I want to dive down the rabbit hole. That line 1 wants to research everything and get to the bottom of it. So yeah, I would guess that you're already getting invitations because you're not about pushing yourself, your as I say, your brilliance and wisdom that lies within. You're actually receiving these invitations without even being aware of it.
So taking it back, as we explained human design, and then we're talking about the main different parts. If someone were to, let's say, hear this for the first time and they're like, well, how do I know what I am? We just referred to me being a projector, which if this is your first time hearing it, you're probably like, what the heck is that? It is not a projection on a screen. It is actually one of the defined names, which how many are there? 4 or 5?
There's technically there's 4, but there's 5 because there's a hybrid. So we've got manifestors, then we've got generators, then we've got the hybrid, which is the manifesting generator. That's what I am. And then we've got projectors and reflectors.
Okay. So if someone is just hopping into this for the first time and thinking, okay, how do I find out what mine is and why does this matter? Walk us through those steps.
Yeah, okay, easy. So the first thing is you want to find somewhere to get your chart. You can just go to my website, emmadunwoody.com, and get your free chart. And the information that you need is your birth time, date, the city you were born in, and the country you were born in. Now, the thing I want to say is that oftentimes, and I know for me, because as I said, I'm a behavioralist, I was very left brain. When I first started working with human design, I was like, oh, birth time, that sounds a little bit woo. And then, me being me, I very much was super curious about it. So I ran the experiment anyway, and I got epic results. I mean, I run, my business is a 7-figure business, and we hired a consultant to help us scale last year. And she just kept saying over and over, like, how have you done so well? How have you had so much success? How? You don't do any of the things. You've broken all the rules. And I just smirk the whole time. I'm like, we're just following our strategy and authority. We're just following our design. Once you have that information, it's important to understand that at that moment in time, your birth, and then approximately 3 months before you're born, we take a reading. And that reading is from these things called neutrinos, which are these subatomic particles that move through everything in the universe. And they are, at the moment, there is like a multi-million-dollar facility in Japan that is studying these incredible things, neutrinos, because they influence us with the things that they move through. So the planets in the universe, as they move through our body, they kind of like drop bits off. So that reading that we get, it's like where all the celestial bodies were in the world as you were born, and those neutrinos pass through your body. That creates what we call your natal chart. It's the same in astrology, but it's also in human design. And what that does is that gives you your blueprint, like your base blueprint that you've been born with. And once you have that, then you just go and grab your free chart, and you start to unpack it. I've actually done a whole series on my podcast called the roadmap series, because the thing with human design is it is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
There's all of these wisdoms mapped together. And we do have, like, we've got human design, and then there's this other incredible thing called the gene keys that work, hand in hand together. Ultimately, you want to start with your type, and you start to understand your strategy and authority and your profile, and you'll just, like, one by one go deeper and deeper and deeper until you're just at that point where, for me, I feel like so much of it's just unconscious now.
Right. It's like a new language, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit, because I'm curious we talk about building business around here. So what was it after doing your chart, and you were a behavioralist? So obviously this is a passion for you. It's something you've known and studied as far as how humans work, which to me is really fascinating too. So what was it that allowed you to shift gears, or what did you do to turn it into a business?
Yeah, so great question. The thing for me, so 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with depression and panic disorder.
Mm.
Now, that diagnosis I was given, basically, the leading specialist in Melbourne at the time just said to me, look, you won't heal from this, but you'll learn to manage it. And that wasn't an option for me. So that sparked this, right, well, I need to heal myself. So I very much went into the understanding behavior, psychology, neuroscience, quantum physics. Like, I just studied everything to heal myself, all sorts of healing modalities. But in, very left brain, science-based stuff was kind of the direction I went in. Then, of course, I went into the personal development world, and that's where I shifted out of the advertising industry. And then I retrained. I took a 3-year program to become a master coach. Now, so for probably 15 of those 20 years, I was doing the personal development business, building 101, Tony Robbins, just take massive action. Every business structure or strategy that someone would give me, I'd just run it. And I was just exhausted all the time. I'm just like, and just not like, it just was not hitting for me. And then when I came to human design, by this stage I had a part-time business that was very successful. I just, worked with corporates, C-level executives, ran workshops in big corporate businesses. It was all referral based. And then when I introduced human design, everything just started to change. I never visioned that I would do this with human design, but I was just following my experiment. And my experiment took me down this path to change the name of my podcast. So I did, to the Human Design Podcast, even though my ego was like, you can't do that, you don't know enough. And the world outside of me was saying, you have to be an expert in something. And I'm like, I'm not an expert in this yet. But I just followed my strategy and authority, and I followed my profile. So I'm a line 3. I just kept having these experiences. I would get my learnings, and then my line 5, I'd want to universalize them. So I want to share them with the world. So ultimately, as the business started to grow, I threw out all the rule books and I just followed my strategy and authority. And then it got to a point where I needed to start hiring a team. And the first person that I hired, and I only hired her just as like a part-time support person, she's now the COO of my business.
Wow.
And again, like we just looked at our charts and how they work together, and they couldn't be more perfect together. So the whole journey, I think the biggest shift is they stopped giving my power away to everybody else. And then when I didn't get the results that the, expert told me I should be getting, I didn't beat myself up because I, felt like I'd done something wrong. Instead, I would go to the expert that my strategy and authority had taken me to. I would have an experience, I would run their model, and then I'd just tweak it. I'd be like, well, intuitively, I feel like I need to do more of this and less of that. And I would just really build my own belief in myself and really leaning into my design, like understanding some fundamental things like, my life's work is very much about community. My core talent is very much about delivering breakthroughs and simplifying. That people are drawn to me because I'm here to empower them. So I started to take all these pieces from my design and go, oh my God, there it is. It's showing up over here. Oh, it's showing up over there. Just looking at clients in the past. So what my human design really gave me was this, almost like this validation of like the things that I didn't think were important because I've been giving my power away to some expert outside of me, all of a sudden became really important. And I'll give you an example, like a real 3D example of that. As I was starting to grow the business, I have a membership community, and I still to this day, I'm not sure why I call it a membership, because it's not a membership. It's like an academy. It's like the most transformational community anyone can be a part of. It's really incredible. And as I was building this community, I kept inviting my friends in to teach. And of course, all the experts are like, no, and my training had taught me you need to be the one solution. You need to be the expert. You need to be, you don't share. And I was like, my ego was like, God, am I doing myself, am I going to end up losing out here because I keep introducing all these other teachers and all of my community go and spend money with these other teachers, and am I missing out? But my design, my heart, my soul, everything was like, just trust it, Emma, just trust it, Emma, just trust it, Emma. And in my design, the culture that I thrive in is going in and out of other people's networks. So that's actually how I thrive. And ultimately back then, when my business wasn't a 7-figure business, it felt scary, but I just trusted it anyway. And now, I have a very, very successful business that breaks all of the rules, and we have some of the greatest teachers inside. They don't teach anywhere else doing what they do for us inside our community. And I feel like I'm really growing everyone that is a part of my community, just expanding them in so many different ways that I couldn't do on my own. So yeah, it's a game changer.
Wow. When did you, as far as this community goes, what platform did you like to use for that? And when did that shift happen where you would kind of let go of that other business that you had and you went all in on this direction?
So it was around 2018. So 2018 was when I first integrated human design, and it was quite a moment because that was when I still had all corporate clients. And I'd started experimenting with human design, and I was like, okay, like I promised the universe that I'm going to do this experiment thing, so I better start talking about it with my clients. And I was honestly afraid to ask for their birth time. Like that was the thing. And as soon as I asked my first client, and he was the stereotypical CEO, business owner, very masculine, I asked for his time of birth, and he's like, yeah, here's mine. And here's my kids, and here's my wife's. Can you do all of our chart? I'm like, okay. And from that point on, like every time I mentioned it, no one hesitated. They just wanted to learn more. And I could just see how all of a sudden the results that I'd already delivered for these clients just magnified. They just amplified. You know, they all started leading very, very differently because they were leading in alignment with their design. So that was the first piece. But then once I changed the name of my podcast, again, like my whole business started to grow and evolve in a very different direction. So instead of being in the corporate world, I started being in the more consumer-based world. It was all these people wanting to learn about human design. So, and again, I launched the expert that I was learning from at the time. You know, I was being taught that you have to start small, like, you know, create your free product, and then then the next price point up, and then you finish with your highest price point. In 2020, the week of lockdown in Sydney, I launched my first ever product, and it was a mastermind, and it was $6,000, which was a lot. And I remember thinking at the time, like, am I mental? But I wasn't mental. I filled it. And that mastermind, still to this day, every time I launch it, it's sold out within, 3-4 days. It just fills so quickly. And again, it's because of my design, like just following my design. So then that morphed into this community that we have, which is HDX. It's the Human Design Experience, and all about learning all the different facets. And again, over time, what's happened with this is that it's evolved into more than just human design. You know, we have one of my best friends and my wealth coach. She's in there teaching all things wealth, money, investing, all those sort of things. We do a lot of stuff focused on business now, especially using human design. We've just about to have an expert start with us to do human design with marketing. We've had Elijah Parker, who is this guy who's Richard Rudd's right-hand man, and Richard Rudd created the Gene Keys, and he's teaching all of that in there. So, how do we run this? It just evolves. We do it like HDX Live, we do live retreats, but again, it's just following my design. And because I'm a manifesting generator, like the moment my community gives me something to respond to, I'm an emotional manifesting generator, for those of you that know what I'm talking about. So I just sleep on it, I wait, and then, okay, then we'll just create it. If they're asking for it, we'll create it. If it feels in alignment with me, if it gives me energy, I'm lit up to do it, then we'll create it. So we've very much been led not only by my design, but by the community. Like they tell us where they want us to go, and we go there.
Yeah. Well, that's good marketing right there. I mean, listening to an audience and fulfilling a request, that's good marketing, because it's really giving the answers and solutions to people who are looking for them in real time, which says that you have a very engaged audience that's listening. So that's amazing.
And I think that's, I love that this point, and this is something that has been so fascinating to me over the years, is that my community is so engaged that every time we have a teacher or a podcast guest on my podcast, I always get this feedback. What do you do in your community? Because your people, they not only ask better questions, they sign up fast, they do the work, and they get the results. And I think that this is the thing for me, because because I'm just following my design. I'm being me. I'm so authentic. What you see is what you get. I'm the same human anywhere. And I think that that's the thing that I'm so proud of, is that I see this in real time. I get feedback all the time that these humans are really doing the work. They are really becoming the great humans that we need right now on planet Earth to lead us through to this new world.
Yeah. I think that what you're offering, and I love that your focus is on discovering purpose and really connecting with your superpower, because each of us has superpowers. It's really dialing in and knowing what they are and how to take that direction. What is the best way to discover that purpose? I mean, for someone who's listening, of course, they need to come see everything you're doing. But in the purposes for this episode right now, what is the best way to get started with that, of discovering your purpose?
The first thing I want to say to everyone, and because this was me, is that if you're listening to this, then you're already on purpose. I think so many of us, and like I did, we perceive that our purpose is something that we have to find, and that then we'll do it and everything will be perfect. And the truth is our purpose is our hero's journey. Our purpose is, I often talk about it on my podcast. I always ask people, like, what was your dark night of the soul? What was your invitation out of your conditioning? What was that moment? Because that, in my opinion, 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with depression and panic disorder, that was the initiation. That was the invitation into my purpose. And although there were so many times that I was down on my knees, that I've really struggled. I've completely healed my mental health, but it took me like 7 years. However, I am a person that can say I will never, ever do depression again or panic. I know that I've rewired my brain. I've solved the problem. Now, so the first thing is that you're already on it. You're already doing it. And if you're someone that feels really lost, like, well, it doesn't feel like it, then I would really, the thing that I think is most powerful is whatever it is that you are so desperate to fix about yourself, it's probably the fear expression of something you're really good at. In fact, it's probably the fear expression of something that you're here to give to the world. Because so often once we start running our human design experiments, we realize that we're trying to fix something that isn't broken. And spoiler alert, no one needs fixing. No one is broken. Everyone is perfect just as they are. So first and foremost, trust that you're already there. Trust that you're already on the path. But if you're listening to this, then you want something specific about human design. And well, your purpose is a culmination. It's an entire story that your design tells when it all works together. But we can start with our type, like just with our type. It's the highest level. And I often talk about it as like our container of our purpose. It's like this overarching theme before we get down into the nitty-gritty and the details. Mm-hmm. And if you're a manifester, well, the container of your purpose is to inspire people into action. Like that's what you're here to do. Break the rules, go in new directions, follow that that internal creative flow. And as you be unapologetically you inspire others into action. That is the container of your purpose. A generator, the container of your purpose is to stop doing the work that doesn't light you up and follow what does. Do the work that lights you up. Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. That doesn't mean that there aren't challenges, but it's the stuff that you're like, oh my goodness, I just can't get enough of it. Even on the hard days, you're like, yeah, I just love this. It lights me up. That's the container of your purpose. For manifesting generators, you're here to demonstrate human potential. What does that mean? It means that you get to go out, break a lot of stuff that doesn't work and remake it. You're here to show people that you don't have to pick something and live with it forever. You're here to show people that we can break all the rules and create something even better. If you're a projector, the container of your purpose is your ability to see energy and efficiencies. What does that mean? It means that you can see the way people are using their energy resourcefully or unresourcefully. And you have a system, and maybe more than one system. There is something very specific in you that you can do better. And then people want your wisdom. That is the container of your purpose. And then if you are a reflector, then the container of your purpose really is about, it's in the name, it's in a reflection. You are telling us the truth of where we are, who we're being, what we're doing in the world right now. So the container of your purpose really is to be, be that mirror. And for you, be with people, places, and experiences that make you feel good, because that's the thing you're going to amplify. You're going to help us amplify on planet Earth.
Aren't they all so amazing? I listen to each one of those descriptions and I think those are all so beautiful and all needing of each other, which isn't to say that you can't have qualities of more than one, but that there can be a guiding direction through this effort.
Yeah. And so much like there are, they all overlap. That's the other thing. Mm-hmm. Just because you're, let's say, because if, for me, I'm like, being a manifesting generator myself, I'm like, I love it. I love this demonstrating human potential thing. Like since I was tiny, like some of my first memories is, what impact can I have? How can I make the planet a better place? But that doesn't mean that a manifestor, generator, projector, or reflector can't demonstrate human potential. Of course they freaking can, you know? So I think one of the big things to understand is this is, in my opinion, and the way I teach it, this is not something to minimize you. It's something to expand you. It's something to really get you accessing the potential that lies within you.
I love that. I am curious, just thinking back to the community piece of really engaging an audience and where you said, it's really being authentically you. Is that something that really helped you expand through social media or through live events? Or what do you think? I mean, it could be more than one, but for people who are listening and maybe wanting to incorporate that more into their business or the way that they're doing things, what are some key ingredients?
To being authentic, is that what you mean?
Yes, and growing your community in the way that you have.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, and I get this a lot, when people are asked, what specifically were you drawn to? Often people will say, well, they were drawn to my authenticity and my confidence. And I often remind people, and I just on the weekend, I did the exact same thing. When I was a child, at least up until the age of even 18, especially my primary school years, I was so shy. I did not say boo to anybody. I was so afraid. And in my teen years, I was very shy, reserved, quiet. Even as I sort of started to, grow into adulthood, there was parts of me that I would start to find my confidence. And then there was parts of me that I still would hide away. And ultimately, now when people say, oh my goodness, you are so confident, like I just walked out in front of all these people on the weekend and just started talking, and my whole team are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't do anything. I just be me. And the truth is that I'm confident because I know who I am. I know what I do, what I can do. I know what I can't do. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I have absolutely no shame in saying I don't know. I will defer to another expert if I don't have the answer. So the thing for me is authenticity is the driving force. Authenticity is the ultimate permission slip to be you. And we're so afraid to be ourselves. I mean, I know that firsthand. We are so afraid because who we are taught to be, whether it's in school or our family of origin or by society, the freaking media, even the way the governments speak, we are so conditioned to be who people want us to be, expect us to be, people think we should be. And that's just not true. Our power lies within who we really are in our heart, in our soul. And the more that we can shed all of that conditioning, the more that we can choose love over fear, the more that we can love, trust, and accept ourselves just as we are, then the more that we can create whatever we want to create the way we're designed to create it and love what we've created. There's way too many people climbing the wrong mountain and getting to the top of whatever, business, education, relationship, and going, oh, wrong one, and having to start all over again. And I did the same thing, But yeah, I think ultimately the most important thing we can do is to shed all the things we should be and really connect to who we are on the inside. And I think that's the biggest part of my community. Everyone is really acknowledged for who they are. In my community, we have people who, for example, one of the girls that's been in HDX for years now, she's an exceptional astrologer. So she does a class every new moon and full moon. I just invited her. Do you want to do a class for the whole community? My ego isn't afraid of people taking things away from me anymore. Yep, sure. I was there like everybody else in the beginning. So it's really about being able to shed everything that we're afraid of or everything that we've been taught and really trusting the truth of who we are.
I love that. Shedding what you should be so that you can be who you are. That's beautiful. Do you have favorites for hosting community as far as like platforms or?
Yeah, so we use Kajabi for all the hosting platforms. And I am so excited to say that we have finally moved off Facebook because I can't stand Facebook.
I know that Kajabi offers like community within it. That's where my courses live, but I've never used it for the community piece. It works
Yeah, so
well.
we don't use that either. No,
Oh, okay. I'm like,
so my COO Taylor, again, this is all in her design. She's a 5'1" sacral MG, and she just loves the details. So she has
yeah.
done extensive testing, and we're actually with Circle.
Okay.
One of my good friends, another entrepreneur, she's been using Circle for a long time. So we've got a number of people as well that we know have been
Mhm.
using it. So yeah, so far it's brilliant, and I'm just so excited to be off Facebook.
Yeah, what I love about Circle especially is that when anyone does a new comment or update, it will email your members, which is a really great way to let people know about lives that you do. If you have a guest speaker or if there's community questions, you can detail and categorize them by topic, which I think is really cool too, because then people can choose to be a part of that piece of the community or not.
Mm.
So I'm getting more familiar with that platform. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that really sold us on it as well, because we have so many different teachers now in our community. We want to be able to put, all the wealth conversations in one place
Mhm.
and all the gene keys conversations in another place. So yeah, it's cool. We love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'd love to shift gears a little bit to the parenting aspect. And we touched on this briefly, that that's something that you had done with your children, looking into their design and making it or allowing you to be a better parent by being in tune with that. And is that something that takes a lot of training to be able to do? Or what would be your best advice for that if someone's interested?
Yeah, so I think the greatest gift we can give our children is permission to be themselves. Really, I
Mhm.
do. And our education system, whether you're in Australia or you're in the States, it does not provide that for our children. It in fact takes it away from them. It teaches them to be like everybody else and to compare themselves to everyone else, which
Amen. Yes.
and it's really, really unresourceful. And we're now living in a time where things like ADHD, a
Mhm.
lot of the mental health issues, mental disorders, like all of these things are really amping up. And for so many reasons, because our food predominantly is poisoned with pesticides, because, our kids, as human beings, are actually evolving. There's so many reasons why we're experiencing these things right now. And the old model says, well, if we don't fit the standard, then we're broken. And for me personally, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in grade 2. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, because then I had this little label that I carried around and beat myself up with all the time. And I just didn't try. I was like, well, I'm dyslexic. I can't spell. I can't read. I can't do this, can't do that. And it wasn't until I found I was reading I don't know what, but it was something inspiring. And I came across this story about, I think it was Emerson, maybe one of the greats, one of the great inventors, one of the great geniuses. And he had been kicked out of school because he was dyslexic as a child. And his mother had been given this letter. And in this letter, it said, basically, you need to take him home. There's nothing we can do with him. He's, all the awful words that they say about all sorts of mental health issues or mental disorders or whatever. And she actually read the letter back to him, except she just embellished it. She said, sorry, we can no longer teach him because he's too clever and he learns in a very different way, and da da da. So she read it back to him in this way. So that inspired him to become this great inventor, because the point was she learned how to teach him how his brain works, how his body works. And of
Mhm.
course, he becomes this great, great human. And he actually finds the letter. She kept the letter. And after she died, he found it and then found the truth of what it really said. So the thing for me is that we have to stop putting our children into boxes and applying labels. Like, I know there's a lot of relief, and I'm not, I don't want to demonize either way. I know there's a lot of relief for a parent that gets an ADHD, you know, uh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Medication or
Yeah, no, that the
diagnosis?
ADHD diagnosis. Thank you.
Okay.
I know that when a lot of parents get those diagnoses, they feel that real sense of release, that relief, that real like, okay, there is something else going on. So I don't want to take that away from anyone. I think it's really important that we follow our path, and whatever path that is correct for us. However, we also need to not make these things wrong, because what if these are actually the human brain evolving? What if this is the human, and we know this is happening, the brain is changing, the species that we are is changing, and there's a lot to say in a lot of different, whether it's spiritual or biological or physics. We're really talking about the human species morphing, and around 2027, that shift's really starting to change. So what if there is nothing wrong with our children? What if the problem is the system is wrong? The thing that we keep trying to put them into is wrong. And in my opinion, that's the truth. Like if you have a child that is diagnosed with something, well, like dyslexia, did you know that one of the contributing factors, or one of the things most dyslexics also have, is genius? Most dyslexics are on the genius scale. It's just that we don't learn the way the school teaches us. So with human design, we get a completely different map. We get to look at the way our children are designed. We get to actually look at, okay, well, how do I ask them questions? I have 2 kids that are sacral MGs, so I ask them a lot of yes/no questions, because then they're not answering from their conditioned mind. They're answering from their gut, their sacral, which is actually their North Star. It's also understanding their talents. Like I have 2 manifesting generators. They've got a lot of energy, making sure that they are physically moving all the time. Whereas for you as a projector, maybe as a kid, I'm just quickly looking at your chart. I mean, you do have a defined root center, so you probably have quite a bit of energy for a projector. But, like we're sending our projector children off to school, and then we're bringing them home and sending them to after school sport and all these things. Like you are burning out your children. Like they don't have the energy for that. They need to rest and recover, because they sit in the classroom taking in everybody else's energy, and it's exhausting them. So on so many levels, we can start to really see our little humans for who they really are, and we can adapt our parenting to support them. There's another part of the chart that we can look at to really understand what our kids need. And my youngest son, he was, I don't know what the word is. I don't like saying challenging, but he was a little bit more challenging, especially when he was younger. And this really helped me, because in this particular part of the chart, he's got this keynote of patience. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm always trying to rush this kid. I'm always like, trying to get him to this to some sort of destination. So I just stopped doing it. I just knew that he would get to whatever the destination was, whether that was, taking responsibility for cleaning his room, or doing his homework, or whatever it was. I just gave him more space and time. And now at the age of 12, he's extraordinary, because I just backed off, and I just knew it was going to happen, but I just was patient, and I gave him the time, and I didn't put time pressure on him. So human design is so powerful for really being able to parent our kids the way that they need to be parented. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I need to know more, you can get your free chart on our website, and you can put their charts through there as well. And we have a whole parenting series on the podcast. So it's free. You can just go there, listen to it. It's just so fantastic. It just is a game changer for parenting.
Oh, I love the stories that you shared. And it's interesting because everything you talked about, dyslexia, depression, anxiety, ADHD, that's all things that are within my own family. And I'm sure many who are listening, these are very common things that we're learning more about, where I feel like a lot of it before was hush hush, or you brush it under a rug, or, oh, we don't exactly know how to deal with that. We're just going to give you this label. So I love that there is so much empowerment that can come from seeking what resources we have and really looking at each of us as individuals. And isn't that is so powerful?
Exactly. That's the beauty of human design, is the science of differentiation. So straight at the outset, it's all about celebrating our uniqueness. It's no longer putting us into groups or buckets, or, comparing us to others.
Yeah. What is one thing that you are, as we're closing this up, I have a couple of questions just to
Yeah, go
tie
for
it
it.
up a little bit. What is one thing that you are currently working on that is helping to develop yourself or your business? If you have like a daily routine or something that really gives you life right now, what is that thing that's helping you?
Wow. So I'm a manifesting generator, so it's never one thing.
Hmm.
The journal, I've switched out my journal practice for something really cool at the moment, which is cool things to remember. So every
Hmm.
day I just write down the cool things to remember. Um, and that might be a moment that I shared with my kids. That might be I interviewed Bruce Lipton last week. Like, it can be anything from massive to little. And that's something that's really keeping my brain, my reticular activating system really focused on what I want it to be focused on, which is important for me right now. Because although we're having great success in the business, I'm also going through some challenging personal stuff. I'm separating from my husband. So I'm just very consciously aware of like that, what my focus is on at the moment. And I suppose, my other practice again, because I'm recovering from being a hustler, like I have
Yeah.
hustled my butt my entire life. I've always done a billion things. I mean, as I said, I'm a manifesting generator, but I'm actually really working on slowing down. Like
Yeah.
this year is very much about slowing down, taking more time, upgrading my relationship with time again. And yeah, it's amazing how it should be easy, but it's just not. And I teach a lot on this as well. So I feel like I'm very much teaching what I need to learn right now.
Yeah, that's how it goes a lot of times. One thing I also like to have to share with our audience is a motherhood moment. Is there something from this recent week that as a mom you learned, or maybe an anecdote that you can share from
Oh my
mothering?
goodness. I have so many. I can't even. But I'm so proud of both of my children. You know what? This is one that just happened this week. My youngest son was, you know how kids are. There's kind of this back and forth. He'd done something that in the spur of the moment probably wasn't the best thing to do, and we were working through this process, and he had actually got onto. So I'm very strict about social media
Hmm.
with my kids because social media is changing our children's brain. We should not, if they're on it, they need to have very, very strict boundaries. It's
Yeah,
just better that they're not on it at all because
I
it's
agree.
changing their brains, and
Hmm.
it's not a good thing. And they are actively, the algorithms are actively created to get people addicted to them. And
Hmm.
like TikTok is the worst. Please do not let your children have TikTok. It's so bad. Anyway, we're talking about things and he's being so responsible. He's like, yeah, mom, I did this. I realized that it probably wasn't the best thing to do and I apologized and da da da. And he said, mum, and he was really like so upset about it. He's like, mum, I got Snapchat. And I was like, all right. And I took a breath. And again, for those who know what I'm talking about, I'm an emotional manifesting generator. So I took some time out. So came back to the conversation a little bit later that day, sat down with him. I'd spoken to the parent, I'd spoken to the teacher, all of these things. And it was, how schools just blow things out of proportion. Anyway,
Yes,
it
I
was one
do.
of those things.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And I sat down with him and he said, Mum, I'm so sorry that I got Snapchat. I know I'm not meant to have it. It's just that, most of my friends are on Snapchat. I'll show you everything. And he sat there and he voluntarily showed me everything, all the conversations, all the photos, all the things. He said other kids don't have messaging or they don't have this and or Telegram, because I love Telegram. They're like, Mum, they just don't have them. So I have it just so that I can just check in every now and then. And he sort of took me through everything. And I just was like, all right, buddy. All right, buddy. I'm going to let you keep Snapchat. And like in that moment, I almost surprised myself because I have all these rules and values and things that my mind and my identity and my ego are really attached to. But this kid took full responsibility. He openly demonstrated that how he'd been using it and all of the things. He literally went to delete it. And I was like, no, it's fine. So for me, I think that's a really important parenting moment. I think we need to understand that the trust we build with our children, when we can demonstrate that we trust them, even though they've made a choice that isn't probably the greatest choice at the time, but the way they handled it is so worth your trust. I think that moment, I think that's going to be a real game changer for him as a man. Those moments of like, well, if I need to be responsible about things. I need to make, better choices. I need to like, I think for me personally, I think it's a really important moment.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, to see him take ownership of that and be ready to delete it, that shows maturity. That had he been defensive about it or tried to, put
Exactly. Like he didn't
blocks
fight me
up.
on anything, he took full responsibility. He knew that, like his brother had been through it years ago. He knew that it was getting deleted.
Yeah.
And he just was so responsible about it. And when he actually came to me with a really fair justification for why he was using it, then I was like, well, I feel like I need to trust him on this.
Mm. That's one thing I know for sure is that parenting is not a one size fits all. And I was talking to my younger son about cell phones and social media and the groundwork that we've put in place with his older brother and sister. And I told him, he's 10. I have a 15 and 13-year-old. And I said, I've learned that the same set of rules can't necessarily be the same for everyone because you're ready for it at different ages depending on your
Exactly.
maturity. And he actually got it. He's like, okay, I understand that. But when do you think it'll work for me? And I said, we'll just have to wait and see. Because
Yeah.
eventually at some point, these kids, my son, who's almost 16, he will have to know how to govern himself with
Yeah.
use of a cell phone, with the use of social media. And I agree with you. We don't have him on YouTube or TikTok. That doesn't mean that he can't Google it and find videos in different ways because they can.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
to be involved and have the conversation about it and how are we using it and are we being responsible with the time? And I love that he demonstrated those things with you.
Yeah, I so agree. I think that we have to be so conscious not to be these helicopter parents that are like, you can't do this and you can't do that. Because as you say, like at some point they have to learn to take responsibility for themselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the biggest thing I've learned with my kids is that, you know, that's one of my greatest values. Like if I learned one thing from being diagnosed with depression and panic disorder and that 20-year journey, it is the fundamental quality of your life is due to how much responsibility you take for it. And if you take, if we're teaching our kids to take responsibility and to self-govern and to make better choices, we're not making them good or bad or right or wrong. We're talking about the choices that they're making and what they're learning, then I often say, like, I'm raising men. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
raising boys, I'm raising men. And that's really important. At some point, we have to choose to trust them, even though our egos are like, oh my God, my
It's
16,
terrifying.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
My 16-year-old, just one of his first friend got their driver's license and she's driving them around. And, there's a part of me that's like, I just
Yeah.
don't even want to think about it. But at the end of the day, we've had the discussion. I'm like, you have to, and again, human design, bless it. Like, you have to trust your gut. If your
Mm,
gut says, oh, I'm not getting in that car, don't get in the freaking car.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
if your gut says, yeah, it feels safe, then trust your gut. Because if I tell him, well, these are the rules and this is the thing, he's never going to
Mm-hmm.
trust himself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think parenting, like being a kid right now is hard.
Yes.
Parenting is hard,
Yes.
and as you said, like every conversation has to be different. Like every individual has to be treated as exactly that, like my eldest wanted to be on Instagram and I was like, nope, not until you're 13. Whereas my youngest could not care. Like he's like
Right.
not interested at all. And
Yeah.
I'm like, great. So I'm just
Thank
going to let
heavens.
13 like fly
Breeze
by.
by.
Like
Yep.
hopefully, yeah, hopefully he doesn't get on it for ages. But yeah, it's an
Yeah,
important conversation.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, as we wrap up, I would love for you to share with us, what are you watching, reading, or listening to? If you have one of each or one that really sticks out to you, we'd love to hear.
Okay, so you know what, I'm going to say the book I'm actually listening to at the moment is Biohack Like a Woman by
Mm,
Aggie Lau, because I love biohacking. The thing that I'm watching, so I'm obsessed with Gaia TV at the moment, which is like the Netflix for spiritual and personal development. Um, and they've just released the Gaia immersion event. So I've been watching like Dr. Zach Bush, and all of those sort of epic humans talking about, yeah, human development, planetary, like the planets changing, all the things. So I love Gaia at the moment. Just digging it big time.
awesome. Yeah, I have never even heard of that. So cool.
Oh
We'll
my
we'll
goodness, you
link
got to
to it
go check it
below.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then please tell our audience where they can find you. I know you've mentioned your website a few times. We'll of course link that below, and then your podcast as well.
Yeah, so it's the Human Design Podcast, my website. You can go and get your free chart there, and then we will drip feed you emails because there's so much information of
Hmm.
where to go, which podcast episode for each part of your chart. And you can find me on Instagram. I am the Human Design Coach, and you can always drop me a DM over there. I love to have conversations with people running their experiment.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emma. I think that you have dropped so much knowledge here. It's just really scratching the surface. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been super fun. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We would love so much for you to leave a review, share this episode with a friend. Anytime you do, it helps the show to grow, and it also gives other women and mothers bigger and broader ideas of what's possible for them. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Hey, CEOs, thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please let me know in a comment and a 5-star review. You could have the chance of being a featured review on an upcoming episode. Continue the conversation on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast. And remember, you are the boss.